On this week's episode of Comics Controllers, we talk about the new DC animated movie Justice League War and how it ties into the new 52. And we also talk about an epic battle that took place this week in EVE Online, where over $330,000 in real money of ships were lost. All that and more on this, Episode 8, War. Are you willing to ISK it? Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Comics Controllers. As always, I'm Kyle, joined by my co-host Steven.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good, Steven. So this week, we're going to go a little bit different route with the comic book side of things. So rather than talk about an actual comic book per se, we're going to talk about the new DC animated movie Justice League War. Okay, so give us the background for where this movie comes from, Steven.
DC has been on a bit of a roll with their animated features as of late, and they wanted to do, from what I understand, the first, because I believe there will be more that will follow the new 52 line of their comics. And this one takes place technically over the first 6 issues of the new 52 Justice League. And it's a story that sees the Justice League coming together for the first time and meeting each other in this new world.
Yeah, and the villain they fight is Darkseid.
Right.
Who is, he's probably as big and as bad as you can get in the DC universe.
Yeah. If you're going to start off with a bang, that's the way to go.
Now, I've literally read none of the new 52 because part of the reason was I when it came out, I wasn't really reading comics. And now it's just, I feel intimidated to try to read and figure what's going on with it. So I've just kind of let it go the wayside, which may or may not be a good thing.
Yeah, that really is, it's unfortunate because you're not the only person I meet like that. And the whole idea behind DC trying to do this was to get new readers. I mean, if you're a comic book company, every idea that you're trying to do pretty much ends with try to get new readers or try to get people who were readers to get back into reading. And the new 52 was a good thing in that because DC has, Marvel does too, but DC especially has so much going on and so much history. And so the idea was to place everyone about, 5 years into their careers. I believe the whole idea is that each person has been active, in their roles as their superhero identities for anywhere between 1 and 5 years, depending on the person. And then have them, all kind of get together and start at this point, where everything is becoming less of a citywide thing and more of a worldwide thing. And there is a need for the Justice League or for a group.
Okay. And I know a lot of the way the characters acted, too, were different from what I'm used to seeing from those particular characters. Like, Superman, and this was like, wow, where's this Superman been my entire life? I would have read Superman comics. He's like rough and brutal, and he's like, at one point I thought he was going to kill Batman and Green Lantern. Like, he just was so crazy. He did kill somebody in the movie too. He
did, but that person was a villain. That was not one of the.
Yeah, just a heads up, this is going to be a spoiler-heavy episode, which I think most of them are at this point. So from this point forward, this is spoiler alert for the rest of the series of our podcasts.
It's very hard to discuss certain things without just spitting it out and saying this is why this is an issue.
But so, Darkseid has a henchman named Desaad, and Desaad's been around. Like, he's old school. He's one of, I think, Darkseid's first henchmen to ever be shown, but he's basically a scientist guy. And so, Superman Jackson, just snaps his neck like it's nothing.
And after what he did to Superman, I totally stand by his decision.
Yeah. Completely. But that just goes along, though, with how the Superman in this is different than the others. But that's true. Who else?
Hal Jordan is a great example of someone who, in this beginning, is so full of himself. He
reminds me a lot of Flash from the Justice League Unlimited and Justice League cartoon they used
Right,
to have. But I think
right.
that was Wally West Flash, not Barry Allen.
Right, that was Wally West. And I
Yeah.
believe the Flash in this one is Barry Allen.
Yeah, it's Barry Allen. And he's a lot more the adult out of the two. Because normally it's like the Green Lantern is the kind of serious one while the Flash is the joke one. No, it's swapped.
It is a little bit different, and I don't know. There's, like you said, there are a lot of these characters. Batman's probably the only one to me that acts just like I expected him to act.
Batman and Shazam.
Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman kind of acts.
Well, no, Wonder Woman's different to me, though, because, like, yeah, she's an Amazon, but she plays a lot more to the I am a warrior of this, like, wanting to constantly kill things and pull out a sword on people and stuff.
Yeah, we should talk about her a little bit more in depth. But I will say they chose, if you read the comics, they chose to swap out Aquaman being the last member of the team in favor of Shazam. And I'm not usually a big fan of the character of Shazam, but in this movie I think it works very well because they use him to give Victor Stone, who is Cyborg, a little bit more personality and background, and I think it worked amazingly.
Yeah, I do too. I think it was pretty good. I actually like the character Shazam. I like the concept of it and stuff like that. I mean, I can't sit down and tell you, oh yeah, I've read all these Shazam comics. I've never read a single comic that was dedicated to him. But like the character, the background, and his appearance and other things I really liked. And I think a lot of that stems from one of the first words I ever saw him in was Kingdom Come.
Right. Well, that's a good Shazam story right there.
Yeah.
The only thing I actually like about Shazam is, and as I think you and I discussed earlier, is he's just as strong and just as powerful as Superman, but they have a lot more built-in flaws and a lot more built-in character to what he can and will and won't do. And I don't know. I could just never get into it. There was something about, you know,
The Marvel family.
They did this really well in the movie in War, where he's a kid, but he looks like an adult. I love when Wonder Woman sits his ass down and says, "Grow up."
Yeah, they all keep doing that, talking about how he's an immature. He acts like a child and stuff like that. And the only one who knows he's a kid is Cyborg.
Right.
And he basically promises not to tell them, which is good because if they knew he was a child, they'd tell him no. They wouldn't.
Yeah,
let him
they'd be
come
like,
along.
"You're not coming."
Because they're all. That's the one thing is that like these are all. I like they kind of showed this too that all of them are new at the teamwork thing, and they're all very self-absorbed.
I also like the threat of.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I like that the threat of death is there more prevalent in this movie too. So if they knew he was a kid, they would be much less eager to bring him along.
True, but some of the stuff it's like they talk about their turf. Like when they go to meet Superman, he tells them, "You're in my turf. What are you doing here? Go back to your town." So they're very much just focused in their own area, and it's just one event that brings them all together. Right,
and I like that they didn't even bother trying to do the whole "let's talk" thing. It goes back to Green Lantern's brashness, his ego. He thinks he can take Superman, so they just start start fighting. And you can tell Batman's just like, look, I'll do this, but this is stupid.
I do also like that they pretty much, once again, show that Batman's amazing. Because, like, while my favorite scene is when they're fighting Superman, him and Green Lantern. I'm supposed to say Green Jordan. But him and Green Lantern, when they're fighting Superman. And Superman is, like, just beating the crap out of him. And Superman's about to punch Batman. And Batman's basically told Green Lantern, stop fighting, we need to talk to him. And as he's about to punch Batman, he says, Clark, boom. Fucking Superman stops. And he immediately freezes. And he's like, and he looks at him for a moment. He's like, Bruce Wayne, because he looks through the mask.
Yeah. And then, of course, Hal Jordan's like, who the hell is Bruce Wayne?
Yeah. I just like that, though, because, like, it shows that Batman still is this amazing detective who he already knows. Like, he knows who these people are. He's been looking into it his entire time.
Well, he knew. He was the one who points out, he's like, because I think it's Green Lantern says, well, we can go talk to him. He's an alien. And he corrects him and goes, he's Kryptonian, I think is what he says to him.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
And he says this isn't Kryptonian.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good movie, especially, like, I don't think you have to have any background in the New 52 at all to get it. Like, you might kind of be like me and some of the characters you're surprised by.
Right.
But
no, you can watch this and not have read any of the New 52 comics.
Yeah.
And
I would say I like it they changed, because you talked about this earlier, I like how they use Shazam rather than Aquaman too, because my thing with Aquaman, and we kind of talked about this before the show, is that Aquaman he's better to me, he makes more sense to me as a villain, or as a very, like, tenuous ally. Like, he's only here to help us because the entire planet's at risk. Otherwise, he wouldn't care about what's going on up here. It doesn't affect him. Why does he care about what's happening on the surface unless it affects what's going on in the ocean too?
Right. And I know right now the new Aquaman comic is getting great numbers. Like, apparently people love it, but I agree with you. I think he should be used sparingly. And actually, he's one that it makes sense for him to have his own comic, because a lot of what he should be doing no one else would really see. It should be down under the ocean, dealing with, he has an entire kingdom down there and an entire group of people who want to kill him and take his throne,
Yeah.
But I really like this film. I like the costume design. I thought, because they redesigned a lot of, like, Superman, Wonder Woman, Darkseid had kind of this weird extra detail and accents on his costume that all look really good. And each character is really given, like, their own moment to shine. But I really think the person who shined the most to me, the woman who shined the most to me, was Wonder Woman. And if you haven't seen the animated movie they did for her, it was a solo animated movie. It was really good.
Yeah, it was.
And I don't know how DC can make Wonder Woman look so badass and awesome in these animated films, but they cannot, for some reason, translate that to live action. And I know part of it's because they haven't really tried yet, so maybe this new, because they signed Gal Gadot, who will be playing her in Man of Steel 2. They signed her for 2 or 3 movies, but one of them is a standalone Wonder Woman movie, so maybe they'll pull it off. But she has a few great scenes in this animated movie, and if you ever just want to see Wonder Woman just decapitate a bunch of robots,
or the ice cream scene was my favorite with her.
The ice cream scene, or her lassoing the dude who admits that he likes to dress up as Wonder Woman. That's
that was pretty good too. That's all part around the same time. But yeah, I mean that animated movie they had of her originally was really good, though I don't think it's the same Wonder Woman. I mean, maybe it was supposed to be. It didn't feel like it though. This Wonder Woman was a lot more like, I don't know the best way of saying it other than straight off the boat from Paradise Island.
Yeah. No, I don't think they were the same. One was New 52, and you could tell they redesigned it a lot. I do like that they kind of, one of the original ideas of Wonder Woman is no matter, like, who she's fighting or who, Wonder Woman's a caring person. And it doesn't translate really well in some of the comics, and especially some of the newer ones, but the whole idea is, originally she was supposed to be trying to help people. That's what she wanted to do. So when she lassos that guy and he admits, and she's basically like, hey, you should embrace it, I think they might have not hit the nail as much as they should have on the head, but it's still a kind of a thing that you can see. She's like, she wants people to be happy and do whatever they want. And I love the scene with the little girl, and I think it was a good show of a mix of a new and older Wonder Woman.
I don't know. I kind of feel, I think, like, this goes along with the concept of Thor as a character in a comic book. I think they are best in their environment. They are best as crazy warrior people from their warrior societies, fighting things that they have to deal with in that. And every now and then showing up in something else. Like, Thor fighting, time-traveling Nazis is weird to me. Wonder Woman fighting, like, people that turned into a cat. What's her name? Cheetah, I think was her name. One of her big villains.
Yeah, it's one of her big ones.
Odd. But her fighting, like, Greek gods and Greek, monsters and stuff, it fits the character. It fits the concept of the character. And it goes, same thing with Aquaman. He should be underwater doing things. So that's why he should have his own comic, because it makes more sense. And I think she has similar stuff. Maybe protecting the world from these problems of these weird Greek mythological things that turn out to be real. And I think this movie, for the most part, they did the warrior thing very well. And they showed that, she's not just like some cold-blooded warrior. I mean, she does want to help people. But I think that's the problem with Wonder Woman in general, is like making it a comic or a character that people can really relate to. I mean, the whole creation of Wonder Woman is weird in and of itself.
Right,
You tell people where she comes from, like, it's the guy who created the
lie detector.
The lie detector, the polygraph machine. He's one who invented her, and it turns out he was into some kind of misogynistic S&M stuff, and that's why she would lose her powers if she got tied up by men and all this craziness.
Right. It was, if you go look at, I think it's the first, 12 covers of the original Wonder Woman, almost all of them have some giant phallic object coming straight at her.
And like I said, that was her original weakness. If she got tied up by a man, she lost her powers.
Yep.
So, and I think that's a hard thing to get away from, is that people don't realize it. And what she wears, ask almost any woman about Wonder Woman, and they'll talk about her costume, because it's goofy.
It is, and you notice, like I said, they redesigned it in this one, and I'm not saying it's much better, but I think it's a little bit better, and it fit her. It seemed to work for her.
Yeah.
To go back to the thing about the Justice League for a second, I think originally the whole idea was, okay, we're going to have an enemy, or we're going to have an event that's so big that it really threatens the entire world, so it makes sense for Wonder Woman and Aquaman and even Batman to come. First of all, Batman used to almost never leave Gotham. Like, you want to talk about somebody who's territorial.
Yeah.
But the idea is that, unfortunately, because of the way the world of comics works, as soon as Justice League became a big deal, you got to have a comic each month. We got to keep this going. And I think ideally it would have been better, storyline wise, if the Justice League only ever got together when an actual event really took place.
And that actually, mentioning that, I'm trying to remember the full story behind it, but I think that's why Justice Society, which they're not, I don't even think they do a Justice Society comic anymore, but they
do.
Do they? Okay. That's where they had come from, was that originally Justice League and Justice Society were from two different universes, and they would cross over, once a year. They would do a crossover where the two teams would have to come together for some reason, and they would fight. Well, people started liking the crossover so much that they basically merged into the same universe, and that's how DC got into the whole problem with having tons and tons of different universes constantly running. Like, Marvel's got a bunch of different universes too, but you don't see stories or series in these other universes unless it's an event 9 times out of 10. But DC wasn't doing that. And that's how you have characters that go from being blonde to suddenly being brunette with no explanation, or characters that go from having parents who were rich to suddenly their parents were now criminals, or they have totally different parents, or they don't have any parents, because they kept having to reinvent the story. And that's why they kept doing all these crises on Infinite Earths or multiple Earths or whatever to try to fix it, because they just kept trying to pull all this stuff together. As soon as the fans started liking it, we need to have a constant Justice Society comic. Let's do it in the other universe. Well, no, that's too complicated. Let's bring it to this universe. Okay.
Well, a great example is I'm reading Green Lantern right now. I'm trying to catch up on a bunch of the Jeff Johns run on Green Lantern. And you have the old Green Lantern, Alan Scott, who I believe is from the Justice Society, who they're explaining, and they have to point out a couple times, he's a Green Lantern, he can wield light, but he's not like us, and they have to. He is
not a fly through space Green Lantern. He's something else.
Yeah, and he
same thing with his
Flash. Weakness is different and all that. Yeah,
he doesn't he doesn't control the Speed Force. He just runs fast. The rest of them all control the Speed Force.
He's the one with the helmet with the wings, yeah.
Yeah, the one who wears a pie tin on his head.
It's Jay Garrett.
That's it.
Yeah. I will say this, though, that I really like this overall, and if any of our listeners want to get into the DC animated universe, probably, in my opinion, the two best things that they've done would be Doom, have you seen Doom?
Yeah, I've seen Doom.
Doom is amazing. It's loosely based off the Tower of Babel comic, which is really good. And then probably what I think is the best thing they've done is Under the Red Hood, which is the Batman Jason Todd thing.
Yeah, that one wasn't too bad.
Really? I loved Under the Red Hood. I actually thought of any of the ones we've read so far, and War would be up there, but of any of the ones we've read so far that did the comic justice, and maybe even in Under the Red Hood's case, I think did some things better than the comic. I'd put Under the Red Hood up there.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of it, but the one where they had the bad Justice League from the other universe.
Yeah, Crisis on Two Earths.
Yeah, that was a good one too.
That was pretty good. The best part of that was James Woods as Owlman. He rocked that shit. But
I'm going to say this, for the most part, to me, when it comes to the animated universes, if you want to look Marvel and DC has consistently had good stuff. Like going all the way back to the original Batman.
Yes.
Batman the Animated Series. You know, Paul Dini and, it's killing me. I can't remember the other guy's name. Bruce Timm. Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. And from there, you got, like, the Superman show, and then you got the Gotham Knights, which is basically, like, I think they consider it the fourth season of the Batman show.
Right, yeah.
Then Justice League Unlimited. Teen Titans was actually technically part of that, because I think it was Paul Dini did that, too. It was just different art style.
Yeah.
And that's all been good. I mean, some of the other stuff, like, I never really watched, like, The Batman.
It's okay. It's not bad.
And Brave, or is it Brave and the Bold?
Yeah, I didn't like that one as much.
Yeah, that one looked like it was more playing back to kind of like an older era of comics.
Yeah, Batman Beyond was probably my favorite, and it tied into everything.
It did. It tied in. That was good, too. I forgot about that.
It was a great tie-in, actually, if you watch the last episode of Season 2 for that show, because it ties into Justice League Unlimited and ties back to the Mask of the Phantasm.
It also ties into something else, though. It ties into Static Shock, because Static Shock was a DC cartoon and comic.
Right.
Static Shock's part of that universe. Yeah, a lot of people do.
Have you watched Beware the Batman, which is the new one that's already been canceled?
No.
It's sad that it got canceled. It was really picking up. The first couple episodes were decent, and then it really started picking up, and they were introducing... A lot of people didn't like it because of the... It was odd. It's it had the female Robin, basically, even though they don't call her that. But her origin story made a lot more sense. And then it had Alfred as kind of a younger combat character, which was really weird. But
I didn't see that one. But I was going to say, I remember reading that they were working on a Damian, Son of Batman movie for cartoon, animated movie.
Yeah, I don't know when it's coming out, but I've seen some of the concept art they've released, and it looks like it could be really good.
I saw like a trailer for it. It looked pretty good. But yeah, I mean, like DC animated universe has consistently been amazing. I mean, there's only one or two I think I remember watching being like, movie wise at least.
What's the DC animated movie that takes place back in the 50s or 60s, and it's a whole Justice League forming thing, and they fight this thing called the Center.
Oh, it's based on the Darwin Cook series, right. Brave and the Bold, or the or the Brave Bold.
Brave New World.
Brave New World. That's it. Brave New World.
That's also probably one of the best ones I've watched. That's
that
really
series, if you've never read it, is amazing, because it's like when these characters would have originally been created back during the 40s and stuff like that, in the 30s and 50s, where they came from, and it kind of ties them all together. Because the other problem with DC is not that, and this isn't a problem now, but back in the old days, DC would buy up smaller companies as they were going out of business, so they'd buy their characters, and that's how they would become parts of the universe. Like, great example is that...
That's how they got Watchmen.
That's how they got Watchmen. That's also how they got Shazam.
Yeah.
That whole group, the Marvel family, was another company. And I'm sure that's why Shazam is a lot like Superman's, because he was supposed to be their super guy.
Right, yeah.
And so they buy up all these characters like Blue Beetle and the Question and all of them and Captain Atom, and bring them over, and then they've got to integrate them into their universe. But they the Brave New World kind of does that in a way where it's like they always existed in this universe. And it's a good story, really good. I mean, it's not short.
Yeah,
and they try to do like a new spin on it. 2 books
worth of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, because you can get one of those absolute collections of it, which is like those massive books.
Right.
But yeah, so final word on it is you should see Justice League War. It's really good.
Definitely. A
lot of things get punched in the face a lot.
The action has a really good flow. The whole movie has a good pacing to it, but the action scenes were really well done. It almost has a tinge of an anime kind of feel when they do some of the combat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I really like. Overall, definitely great movie.
All right, so moving on from one war to an epic battle. So this week, Steven, somebody forgot to pay their rent.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And what happened when they forgot to pay their rent was one of the largest battles in history. Well, in EVE Online history, that is.
Right.
So, for those who don't know, first off, EVE Online is a MMORPG where basically you're in space and you are, for the most part, your ship. And it's a lot of mining and things like that. And there's space battles and pirates, but they don't have guilds per se, they have corporations. And EVE Online actually has an in-game economy that can translate into real-world money. Because if you play EVE Online, I think there's a free version, but there's also a $15 a month version. But you can also pay you can also pay in-game currency to play the game. And it's like 300 million ISK, which is what they call their currency, for a month. And that sounds like a lot, but from what people say, once you start to play the game and you know how to make money, you can make that in a few hours. I was reading some posts where people were talking about, like, well, I paid for 4 accounts with in-game money, so it's not impossible. So, with that said, people can translate when money is lost in EVE to real-world money. So, this week, there was an epic battle that took place that has been estimated to have lost about 330,000 real dollars in ships in this battle. And what led to this battle was the fact that one corporation did not pay the rent on a space station that they controlled. And when they didn't pay the rent on that space station, another corporation that was their ally had stuff inside of it, and they wanted to go get it back out of this uncontrolled space station. However, a rival corp began to attack the station. And basically, both groups started calling in allies until it got down to the point where there was like 4,000 players involved in this battle that went on for hours.
Which is probably the largest battle in, I think, MMO history.
Easily MMO history. It is the largest in EVE. I know that. So yeah, and because of the way it works is that they could actually put a dollar amount on the amount of ships that were lost. And so they said it was about $330,000 in ships, which comes up to be like 6 trillion of the in-game currency.
Which is insane. It is ridiculous that when you think about it, and I guess that's not, it's not as big of a deal because it's not money lost. It's money these people have already spent. But now, how many of these people are going to go have to spend or grind for this money again to replace all they're called Titan ships that they lost? Yeah,
Titan ships, which are the largest ships in the game. And then that's not the only crazy thing that was lost. There were also these types of weapons. I'm trying to remember what they call them. They're basically like quantum nukes for the most part. And they said that 25% of all of those that had ever been created were used in that fight. And they're not easy to make.
Oh, man.
So imagine like a fight that involves 25% of all the nuclear missiles on the planet going off. That's what happened in space.
Right.
And like all the wreckage is just floating out there. So somebody actually went and put up like a little memorial to it. Like, this was the so-and-so battle, largest battle in so-and-so history.
Right, yeah.
But the thing is that you said, like, well, it's not that they lost real money, but they did, in theory. That's actual money. It's just in a different form.
Well, I'm saying it's money that they had already spent,
They hadn't spent it.
Right. Now.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna have to spend more to make up for it if they want to get all that back. I'm wondering how many people, honestly, are like, well, that was fun. See you later.
I don't know. Well, see, here's part of the thing, too, with EVE is that it's probably one of the only games that's actually done this. And I know it's someone that's really done it successfully, but they have a in-game economy to the point where, like, there's an actual kind of stock market, and you can see people putting out prices like, hey, I need to buy this type of metal for this much. And sometimes it's computer and sometimes it's other stuff. And basically, first come, first serve. So if you can get to the place where the person's at and deliver it to them faster than another, then you'll get the money. And sometimes that means risking flying through the areas that aren't protected. So like you have the risk of a player pirate actually attacking you and stealing all the stuff from you before you get there. And because of that, people are actually saying that this is probably going to cause there to be massive price increases in a lot of the, things needed to build these ships. Because, people are like, well, I don't have that much, but I've got a ton of ISK saved up in the bank. I'm just going to go ahead and buy this off these guys. So they'll be willing to pay a lot of money. And then it's going to create a shortage of it, which is going to mean there need to be more people out there mining it. So they're like, it's a living, breathing economy in this game. I mean, it's supply and demand. Well, we don't need it. No, now we need it. You need to go get more of it. We'll pay a lot of money for it.
And obviously, an event of this size it's going to affect the economy for quite some time in that game.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about the economy in that game is that it's so realistic. That the company that makes EVE, called CCP, they actually employ economists, PhD level economists, to monitor the economy of this game.
I remember when EVE was much younger, and they had one guy, and I don't know his name, but they had one guy who was like their overall economist. He was their big PhD economist that worked for it. And people were talking about how you could use like the EVE economy to actually predict things that could possibly happen in the real world economy.
Yeah.
Because that's how crazy it was.
There's several academic articles that have been written on predicting actual economic change in the world, like the global recession that occurred by things that have occurred in EVE Online. I mean, it really goes beyond just thinking about like, wow, that's just crazy, this game's like that. But showing that some of these games are so technical that on the outskirts, you're like, oh, okay, cool, I can just make a spaceship and fly around and blow things up and mine some minerals. But when you really get involved in it, EVE is like a job. I mean, it is so in-depth that it's a whole nother world when you really get into it. If you get into it. Like, I've tried. I can't.
I have some friends that play, but I've honestly never played the game.
EVE is my favorite game to read about, but not play.
I believe that.
I'll be like, this sounds really cool. No, I'm not going to play that. It's too much effort. But to kind of go along with EVE, EVE Online, the company CCP, they're not the only company that are employing people outside of developers nowadays, though. You know, it used to be, if you worked for a video game company, you were probably either some kind of computer programmer, software designer, developer, or maybe an artist or musician to do that side of it. But now these games have gotten so big, and they're living, breathing organisms for the most part, like this economy in EVE, that they have to hire people in these specialized fields. So CCP with EVE has hired economists. Riot Games, that does League of Legends, they actually have neuroscientists and psychologists on staff.
Which is, again, it seems crazy when you say it like that, but I see the point.
I mean, and the reason they have these people on staff is because they have these... They're actually what they call part of the anti-troll squad, because they want to make it where it's, you know, people don't really feel the need to troll or don't want to troll or how to, you know, get around it altogether. And so they have these psychologists and neuroscientists on there trying to figure out the best way of doing that. And it's really just crazy to think that these games have gotten to this point. It makes me wonder what's the next kind of weird, you know, non-developer type of position that some company's going to need to hire to do stuff.
Yeah. You know, and EVE is one of those games that, honestly, I've always heard, like, you can't really play EVE without being a part of a corporation. Mm-hmm. But I guess this also shows the negative side to being in part of a corporation, because if someone calls you in to help them out and you're risking your ship and everything.
Yeah, and see, that's another part of EVE is that, like, unlike in other games where, or MMOs at least, where the communities, they don't want you to do things that are considered kind of sleight of hand or backhanded. You know, they want to have these real nice player communities. That company actually is like, no, if you're going to lie and cheat and steal, then go for it. That's what this game is about. You know, do it. And there have been stories where, like, the Something Awful forums, they have basically a corporation on there called the Goon Swarm, and they've been known to do things like, we're going to try to collapse the economy. And the company was like, go for it. That'd be cool. We want to see what happens. See if you can do it. You know? And that's cool that this company's like that. And there's another time where a guy, back when they really started first doing this, ISK is equivalent to money, he basically lied and cheated and conned his way into all these major corporations to the point where he got access to all this stuff of theirs, took it, disbanded.
Right, yeah. I heard about that.
Disbanded the corporation, yeah. And so now he has all this stuff from the corporation. And they can come after him, but what are they going to do? He has everything.
That's true.
And the company's like, well, you know, he's playing the game.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm the only one who thinks that kind of stuff is neat. Like, to be involved in a game like that, that's just legit. That's the way it would really work, you know?
I think it's really neat, but I'm also thinking that's one guy who probably thinks it's super neat, and then an entire corporation of people who are just like, cussing his name.
They're like, oh, when I find him, I'm going to destroy him. I'm like, no, you're not. He's got all your stuff, but it's cool that you think that. Yeah, I mean, I say it's cool, but like I said, I've not played it like that, and I don't think that would be cool if it happened to me.
Yeah.
Once again, Eve, the coolest game to read about but not play.
Right. As cool as this is, I'm glad we decided to talk about it on here. I don't think this is going to encourage me to actually go try the game.
No, I'm sure it won't encourage anybody out there listening to go play the game, but it's just something crazy to hear about. I mean, Eve's had other major battles, and the last major one was an accident. It wasn't somebody forgot to pay the rent, which there are people debating whether or not that corporation legitimately forgot or just chose not to pay it to see what would happen. But
right.
The last one was the major ships they have, the Titans, they can teleport a group of ships at once, basically through like sublight, whatever, engines to a location. And somebody accidentally teleported a Titan into an enemy area, and they started to fight it. And these Titan ships are very tough, so like just regular ships have a hard time with it. So, of course, they start calling more people in, and well, the guy's like, oh my god, I'm in the middle of this fight, I can't warp out, I need more people, so they start teleporting in. And before you know it, all these corporations are just teleporting in because they're being called into fights. I mean, I heard somebody say it's the equivalent of if China suddenly teleported into Canada, and Canada started calling on its allies, and China's like, uh-oh, we need our allies, and a giant war just ensues because of it.
Right.
Because one person accidentally hit a button and teleported into somewhere. So, that was a large one, too. There was a lot of money. I think they said it was like $90,000 worth, $100,000 worth of ships were lost in that one. So, it's crazy, man, just to think about it. I mean, imagine, like, World of Warcraft, okay? I think we both played it a pretty good bit.
Right.
What kind of people... Imagine if the World of Warcraft economy was a real economy. I mean, it does move to an extent like a real economy at
right.
times.
Well, people do buy gold,
That's true.
I definitely see this, of course, not the same. But, I understand where you're going with that. It could be very similar to that. And I think I'm almost positive, Blizzard had the real life auction house with Diablo 3, and I'm almost guaranteed that they thought about putting something like that in WoW.
Well, and the thing, I've read a lot of people discuss that real life auction house in Diablo 3, and they said the problem with a game like Diablo 3 is that ruined the game.
It did. And I mean, that's why they removed it. It's no longer there.
Yeah. Because part of the thing with Diablo 1, 2, 3, whatever expansion you want to talk about is playing the game through on each mode up all the way till Nightmare, and every time you go through, you get the new crazy items. And once you get the items, you go online and trade with people to see if you can complete sets or get what you want or get better items and stuff like that.
Right.
But that was all negated with that in-game auction house. And that's really a situation where an economy they put in these games destroyed the game. And that's probably why people who've played it on the consoles like it better, because that's not there.
Yeah. That's one game I didn't finish on the PC, but I think if I could get it on the console and play it with a couple friends, I think I would.
Yeah, I mean, I played it through once on the PC, and it's not one of these games that changes on a playthrough, so I was like, I'm not going to play this again. It just gets harder. And by harder, it means like, oh, now this enemy shoots fire and teleports, or now there's 20 of them rather than 10. And that's just not fun to me.
You know who I think would enjoy Eve?
Who?
Trolls. That seems like the biggest game. If you just wanted to troll somebody and like your whole fun that you got out of that was starting these wars, I could just imagine that there are people like that. Like that you were saying, the group who wanted to see if they could break the economy. I'm sure there's people who are just like, let's go see if we can cause a war that doesn't cost us anything but cost others a lot.
Yeah, I could see that. And there were people who I know used to do that stuff in World of Warcraft. They would... so when an expansion first comes out in World of Warcraft, you can always bank on the, just crap green items, which are, the most common magic items you find. People selling them for a crap ton in the auction house because they're new. And people are like, oh my god, new item, cool, let me get this. But they're really not worth that. And 2 months in, people aren't paying anything for them because they're garbage. But I knew people who would just go out, and they wouldn't even try to level, they would just farm for these green items and just go try to make a ton of money. And, swing the economy in this way, or they would go out and just farm the new minerals or the new leather or herbs or whatever you needed for the crafting stuff, and they would just go sell them for just massive amounts of money because they knew they could get away with it, and they knew that if they waited 2 months, it wouldn't be like that because the market would be flooded with it.
Right.
Or vice versa. Then they would know that, especially if there's like a new race or a new class, people are going to have to start over to level that up. Yeah. And so what they would do is they would go get all the low-level stuff that people don't want to go farm because it's like, the hassle of having to farm that. And they would get it, and they would go put it in the auction house for crazy amounts of money because people would be like, well, I'm too lazy to go farm it. I'll just buy it. So...
yeah, I mean, I'll say this. We had a couple of people in our guild when I played WoW that they had, masters in business or economics and stuff like that, and they could work that auction house, especially on the weekends when stuff sells for cheaper. They'd make that thing sing.
So, final story on these auction houses. There's a friend of ours. This is back in the EverQuest days. Okay? Probably the first major MMO that most people played, EverQuest. He started playing. I think we gave him money when he started so he could buy some equipment. He sat in what was the equivalent of the EverQuest auction house, which basically is just a tunnel, and people would just go in there and they would shout because they didn't have these in-game auction systems then, so you just shout, selling so for this much money. So he goes in there like his level 5 character. He's leveled up because that's about... he leveled that up, I think, just by having to run to this place and not die constantly.
Right.
Goes in there, and for like the next month to 2 months, he just sells stuff. He doesn't even... that's how he plays the game, is he sits there in his corner. Like, it was like his corner of this tunnel that people were like, oh, I'm going to go to him. And he made a female character because he knew female characters made more money.
Yeah.
And he just sold stuff. And by the time he had sold everything, because EverQuest didn't have levels on items. Like, you could be a level 1 character wearing an item you got at level 60. He had, like, the best gear he could possibly buy for his character to level in. So leveling was so easy for him. But it was after 2 months of sitting there wheeling and dealing like some kind of drug dealer in this dark corner of this tunnel out here in this zone in EverQuest. And it's one of those things, it's like, if you have the patience and you have the drive, you could, in these games, make that kind of money. Like, I'm sure that if you wanted to, you could do that in EVE, and you could convert that.
Right, yeah.
ISK, you could sell it to people for real money and make money doing it, or World of Warcraft or whatever. But
I believe you, and I like the idea of him just becoming a fixture there that everybody knows who he is.
I mean, they did, because what he would do is, and you're like, how did he get these items? Well, he would just start off buying cheap items from somebody, and then he'd sell them for a little bit more. Like, he would not go below a certain value on it, because he knew, like, I know I get at least this much. So he'd sell it, and then he would buy a little bit more expensive item, until he was eventually, rather than dealing in, like, several $100s worth of items, he was dealing in, like, several hundreds of thousands worth of items. That's like a level 1 character standing out in this tunnel.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. If you think about it, you'll know who I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
But so, yeah.
So the important part is, kids, be ruthless.
Well, the important part is you don't need a business degree to make a ton of money in an MMO. So go out there and just go crazy. You could become the Golden Sachs of Lord of the Rings Online, I guess. I'm sure they have an economy.
Yeah, I'm sure they have something.
I will say, though, I think those kind of games that are pay to play or pay to win, because it really is, yeah. I think those that the economies probably don't work as well. Like, if you're just paying $15 a month to play, like in EVE or World of Warcraft or EverQuest was back in the day, it probably works a lot better. But if you can spend money through the actual company to get real gold or real items in the game, it probably destroys the actual chance of there being a real economy.
I'm sure. There's got to be a backlash to that somewhere, so I'm sure eventually it would. All
right. Well, if you have any stories about your wheelings and dealings in MMOs, or about what you thought of the Justice League War cartoon or any DC animated cartoons, email us at comicsandcontrollers@gmail.com. In fact, if you have any stories or anything you see that you think we should talk about, email those too. We want to have, I think me and Stephen both talked about, we want to have, viewer interaction or listener interaction.
We're always open to talk about whatever.
Yeah. If you want us to talk about, some kind of crazy thing you saw and going on in comics or gaming, send it to us. We'll check it out.
Exactly.
All right. If you want to follow me, you can follow me at Zombie Jesus here on Twitter. And where can they follow you at, Stephen?
Just my name, Stephen Wilds, at Twitter.
All right. So there you go. All right, so until next time, I'm Kyle.
I'm Steven.
Y'all have a good one.